All right, hello, welcome. I see people pouring in here. So we'll wait a minute while our visitors join us. Okay, I think it's sort of leveling off. So we'll go ahead and start the session. Thank you so much for joining us for this panel, Pivoting Undergraduate Research in the COVID Era. As I think we're all aware, COVID-19 has disrupted a lot of things, but certainly research at the university in myriad of ways. From this summer, we had, canceled trips to the archives and suddenly the inability to go in and use lab space or to interact with participants or to go out and do, ethnographic research in person because you needed to prioritize community safety. So research has just, had to innovate in a lot of different ways to these challenges. And our faculty and our student researchers have done such an amazing job with this, coming up with new methods, really creative approaches, moving forward with projects and to develop, new lines of inquiry or different ways of pursuing the original research questions that they had proposed. And today we're so fortunate to have a handful of excellent undergraduate researchers with us here from across a variety of disciplines to describe how they chose to meet this challenge and pivot their research this summer so that they could have a productive, impactful summer research experience. And we're just so lucky to have you all here to share with us your insights and your innovations, and how you made do with the situation that we were all faced with. I might have forgotten to say I'm Dean Human from the Office of Undergraduate Research, and I'm joined as well by my colleagues, the director of the OUR, Dean Joy Kiefer, and our colleague, Miss Amber Noland. And so we will move forward. I'm going to hand off to Dean Kiefer, and we're going to ask the panelists a series of questions, and then we will open up for Q&A, which we hope will be a productive time for if you want to type any questions into the chat, then we can pose them to our panelists here.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dean Human. I echo the sentiment. I am so deeply grateful for all the wonderful ways that our students and our faculty mentors really rose to the occasion in these extremely challenging times to continue with the important work of undergraduate research and just inquiry and research in general. I'll call you in the way that I see you, panelists, and you can just introduce yourself by telling us, what your major and your area of research interest is, and then I will get us started with a few questions. I see Nell first.
Yeah, hello, my name is Nell. I'm a senior. I am a biomedical physics minor, PNP major, but I'm also pre-med. So I sought research specifically in psychiatry and ended up in a lab in the Department of Psychiatry at the med school.
Wonderful, thank you. Devin.
Hi everyone, I'm Devin. I'm a junior studying physics, comp sci, and math, and I do theoretical biophysics through the physics department.
Thank you, welcome. Carmen.
Hey, I'm Carmen. I'm a senior anthropology and Latin American studies double major. And my research interest is kind of in food studies, and I'm looking specifically at Mexican and Central American restaurants in St. Louis.
Awesome. Kun Sang.
Hi everyone, my name is Kun Sung. I am a senior majoring in anthropology, global health and environmental studies and minoring in environmental analysis. Now my research interest includes environmental management in general with specific focus on rural indigenous food, waste management and energy security.
Thank you. And Anam. Sorry.
Hi, sorry, did I cut you off?
Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anamika. I'm a junior majoring in computer science and minoring in biology and bioinformatics. And my research interest is in maybe the cross section of bioinformatics and cancer biology.
Thank you. Mayor?
Hi everyone, I'm Maher. I'm a sophomore majoring in biology with a concentration in biochemistry and minoring in music. And my research interest is currently studying the expansion of the dot chromosome in a species of fruit fly called Drosophila ananassa.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists for being here, giving us their time and expertise and hard-earned wisdom from this summer. So my first question to you guys, and I'll call on you, is what were you originally planning to do this past summer, and what did you need? How were your plans impacted by the pandemic? You know, how did you adapt and pivot your plan? So I'll start with Anami.
Yeah, so originally I had planned to do a circulating tumor DNA related project with my PI at the Genome Institute. I work with Griffith Lab, and we had some trouble with progress on that front because all of the sequencing labs that we were working with were backed up with COVID related work orders, which were obviously more important. And so we weren't able to do kind of the first steps of that project. So to sort of pivot, I decided to continue work on a project I had started when I entered the lab, but sort of stalled after this new ctDNA project came up. This new project was related to neoantigens, and we didn't have access to any of the new data, but we were able to find new visualizations of current data that we had. So that was my job over the summer. I was trying to find patterns and make plots to visualize and characterize new, basically, features of our existing data, if that makes sense.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you and your research mentor, instead of getting blocked with no access to new data, used existing data in new and different ways.
Yeah, that's a really great summary. Yeah, exactly.
Awesome, thank you. How about Kun Sang?
Yes, so initially I proposed to conduct a comparative study between two Himalayan villages in Newbury to study the impacts of plastic consumption by the bovine population through studying solid waste management, distribution, and bovine movement. Now, with the start of the COVID-19 and travel restriction in Nepal, I had to revise my study plan into remotely studying the Himalayan villages in Newbury's response to COVID-19 from a cultural and public health lens. So I would say, despite the chaos caused by the pandemic, and I would credit my research mentor and also the summer undergraduate research advisors for not only, providing me with an option to revise my original study plan, but also for connecting me with the Leadership Alliance. Now, Leadership Alliance is a national consortium of major US higher education institutions. Now, they aim to develop leadership in academia, health, and private sectors. So through this program, I was able to attend around 30 virtual graduate school fairs, and also learn about research experiences from graduate or PhD students. And also the third thing was that I also learned about the Pulitzer Center for Reporting Crisis from the same undergraduate research advisor, Dr. Helen Human. And through this program, I was able to really present my studies findings through a news story, so which was really, really great. And the last thing was that, I was able to connect my study on COVID-19 from one spot to the other spot. Like around mid-August, I also interned for a Dartmouth College professor in translating and transcribing about how Tibetan and Himalayan communities in New York City responded to COVID-19, which also, because it aligned with my summer research. So that was great. And going into the future, I will be working on designing COVID-19 safety protocols for travel and tourism in Nepal for a Nat Geo project. So I believe everything connected together at the end of the day, despite all the frequent changes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And really, a credit to you and your mentor, your research mentor, really, looking at the disruption of the pandemic as an opportunity to ask further questions, to get creative about the questions that you ask, right? So I think that's a really important thing to highlight in both of these stories, that the students and the research mentors, looking at ways to continue on with a line of inquiry and looking at the pandemic as opening up opportunities to look at things that they hadn't looked at before. So how about you, Devin?
I'm going to jump in. Sorry, Devin, really quick. We've had a few people sort of raising their hands from the attendees. So if you can just hold your question for a little bit, we're going to switch to open Q&A after we go through a series of questions with her.
Yeah, so I've been with the same research group since the end of my freshman year, again, doing theoretical biophysics. And we were really lucky because all of our research takes place on our computers. It's all coding, running simulations, analyzing data. And so we were able to kind of just continue as we normally do, obviously just now from our respective homes. So originally my plan for the summer was to finish up a project I've been working on with a grad student for about a year now, and then start a new solo project. Both of the projects are just generally about the dynamics of evolution. So we use like the mathematical and statistical analysis parts of physics to create models of what we think it could be. And in the past, I've done stuff with the med school on antibiotic resistance. And my new project is about horizontal gene transfer, which is something that happens in bacteria. And again, we were really lucky. I mean, the grad student and I were able to write our paper, which will soon be published, and my solo project is slowly becoming a paper. And so the plan really didn't have to change that much, which was a very great thing because we're still able to progress.
Wonderful, thank you. How about you, Nell?
Yeah, so I was actually kind of in a very similar position to Devin, where the bulk of kind of the work for my project was really able to be done through a computer, and kind of that lended itself really well to a remote transition. But I think kind of despite that luck, there was still a lot that I learned about kind of how research can be well pivoted to kind of this, COVID-19 time. But I think we're supposed to save the advice and tips for the end, so I'll keep that a secret until later. But yeah, I definitely kind of just got lucky, honestly, with what I picked as my lab and my project. But of course, that's not necessarily the case for everyone.
Well, I do think luck, I think it's important to 100%, say that, luck plays a role. And I think luck plays a role in terms of, casting a wider net. I think a lot of what we've been encouraging students who are interested in conducting research, who see this time as a time of like, oh, we must not be doing anything, that no, research continues, and that also, continuing with the process of reaching out to people. If they say there's nothing that they can do right now, that you make some connections, that you spend time looking for that lucky break and not just going, oh, well, I guess there's nothing here for me. I think that's an important thing to highlight for sure. How about you, Carmen?
So my approach definitely did have to change. It started off as an anthropology thesis. I was so gung-ho. I was like, I'm going to do so many interviews. I'm going to spend my entire summer. I'm writing specifically about Cherokee Street here in St. Louis. And I had this grand dream of like all the time that I would spend physically inside restaurants, like talking to restaurant owners. I was really interested in the individual identities of restaurant owners. But when COVID hit and I realized like I can still go pick up takeout, I can observe what's happening in that way, but I'm not going to be able to spend the same amount of time in close contact with people, asking them lots of questions. So sort of the nature of my observation changed some. I still tried to like be there physically as much as possible in ways that were safe. But then I sort of shifted my scale from focusing on individuals to looking more at like larger narratives and discourse, looking at food media. So I ended up talking to Ian Frobe, who's like a restaurant critic in the area. Woo, my life. Just thinking more about how I can zoom out and use, because there's so much information about food just everywhere on social media. There are television shows. I can read menus. So I had to switch my approach to be one that was less focused on interviews and people and more focused on other ways that people express themselves, whether that be through writing or images or television. And one part of what made that possible is I actually switched it from being an anthropology thesis to a Latin American studies one. And my advisor changed, and he was really, really open to me taking this sort of multifaceted approach and encouraged me. I even like cooked as part of my research to like gain a deeper appreciation and understanding for like how long it takes to make mole, and very, very long is the answer. And ultimately, I think it was a good thing for me to challenge myself to think beyond just the interview and participant observation, as like wonderful as those are. And I was able to do a couple of in-person interviews, just like sitting outside at the end of summer. So that definitely posed some challenges, because it's kind of hard to navigate asking someone like, can I do this interview, but can we have all of these rules in place to make sure that we're both safe? And I had one mishap where there was an interview that didn't feel super safe, and I was like, okay, I've learned. Really important to communicate what I'm comfortable with, and like no senior thesis that I'm doing is worth risking my or anyone else's safety. Yeah, but I've been really grateful for the support of my advisor and just like approaching this topic from many different angles. It's been interesting. So.
Wonderful. I think that is a really great example of really having to dig creatively to get the kind of information that you need. So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And oh, sorry, Meher.
Yeah, so I also got pretty lucky, like Mel and Devin. But kudos to everybody else that really had to improvise. But yeah, my research is basically like bioinformatics based. So it was all mostly going to be done online. The only part that we really didn't get to do was like the wet bench experiments. We were going to actually work with the flies in lab, but just, you know, for the safety of everybody, that didn't happen, which honestly is okay, because we got to do some like newer things that I know the Elgin Lab like hasn't done in the past. So because of Zoom, we were actually able to collaborate with University of Alabama and learn about some of their research projects that were also bioinformatics based. So like every Wednesday for 10 weeks, we actually had a huge like group meeting on Zoom and got to learn about other people's projects. And at the end, instead of just presenting to each other, we got to present to everybody, see what everybody else was working on. So I think it honestly fostered a really big collaborative environment, which really goes to show, I guess, how connected everybody is in research. So I think it honestly turned out just fine and got to do some new things. So that's always good.
Wonderful. Well, I think that all of your stories are a testament to everyone's creativity and adaptability and just ability to persist, and then also to see the opportunity in the challenge, right? That's a really important piece here. With every challenge, there's always opportunities, right? So to be able to take a step back and assess and then work collaboratively with others to figure out the way forward is really great. I think we'll pause here and take some questions. Dean Human and Amber, do you guys want to give us a few questions that we're seeing here?
Sure.
How about you, Amber? Do you want to start us off?
Yes, so anyone that had raised their hand previously, you're welcome to type a question into the chat and we can get that answered for you. Give me a second.
Yeah, we had a few raised hands, but no one's typed into the, oh, here we go. Okay. All right, how would you recommend finding a research opportunity at the med school in this environment with COVID-19?
That's a good question.
Now, do you want to talk about this? Because you said that you are researching over there.
Yeah, sure. So like I said, I was in the Department of Psychiatry. That's kind of just always been my interest. And honestly, the way I came across it was honestly just searching through WashU. If you Google just something kind of like WashU research mentors or something along those lines, there's multiple websites that come up with just like lists of mentors in different areas. And I just ended up reaching out to as many as kind of like struck my interest. And, you know, you're bound to get some rejections. And of course, during COVID-19, I think that's going to be even more common. So I think definitely don't take it too personally or too harshly. But I think the important thing is just like expressing that you're genuinely interested in the topic, and kind of hopefully one of those works out. And this research that I did my project on this summer was actually the second research lab that I've been a part of. And the first one in my undergraduate experience, like, didn't go quite as smoothly. I think the lab just kind of wasn't exactly the right fit for me. And part of the reason was I think actually I kind of had a connection to the PI in that lab and kind of got that set up a lot more casually and informally. And I think that lent itself to a very different dynamic. And so first of all, I would say that, you know, especially if it's early on in your college time, like, and the research isn't going like super swimmingly, first of all, like, don't give up on the first day, but like ultimately if you realize it's not going somewhere, I think it's totally okay to try again. And like since I kind of cold emailed, you know, these PIs for the second time around and didn't have that pre-existing connection and stuff that really made me a lot more invested in trying to like put myself out there and establish my own relationship with the PI, which I think also went really well. And something that I learned kind of across these two experiences, just in searching for a research lab, especially in the med school, they get a lot of like older students and like actual med students in there that might have a little bit more experience. So one thing I would say is be very kind of cognizant of like what kind of communication and like how much communication you probably need from your PI, especially if you're starting off like in your kind of first research experience. So that was like a huge thing for me. And I think my success in this lab and in completing an entire project over the summer. And I guess I would say that's just like a general tip, especially with COVID, because, you know, all those little conversations that figure out small problems where you just kind of poke your head around the corner and you're like, oh, hey, you know, did we ever figure this out? You don't really have that when you're just by yourself, and it can feel a little cumbersome to email, you know, every single time you have a question, or you don't want to bother other people doing their work. But I think that like being aware of just the communication is super important. But yeah, I think don't be afraid to reach out, you know, and really I think they just want to see that like you're interested in what they're interested in. And as long as you kind of have that baseline there, I think that's a good place to work from.
What we've been saying is that nothing is different in terms of, and you just illustrated that beautifully now, nothing is different in terms of finding a research opportunity and connecting with a research mentor. You might need to talk with more people before you find somebody who has some sort of ability to work with you in during this, you know, challenging time for all of us. So, you know, being generous and understanding in that way, I think is important. And, but, you know, on the Office of Undergraduate Research website, the ur.wustl.edu website, under the Getting Started tab and finding a mentor, click. A whole process there that gives you ideas about where to look for research mentors, links you over to the Division of Bio and Biomedical Sciences at the medical school, where you can search faculty by keyword or name, or and gives you a whole little, you know, several step process. There, Amber generously dropped it into the chat for you. A several step process that is exactly what Nell is talking about, from, you know, reaching out professionally to, you know, engaging in a conversation about, you know, how you can contribute to the research process during this time of the pandemic. I think that is the way to approach it, rather than, do you have a research opportunity for me? How can I help? You know, I would be willing to engage remotely. I would be willing to read articles to get up to speed, so that I'm ready to hit the ground running. Because I really care about your questions and this area of inquiry. That I think is always good advice, and is especially good advice right now, to really not think about it so much as like, I got to get me some research, and oh my God, I'm not going to have any research on my resume, to, well, you know, I'm really interested in these questions, and I'm really interested in helping move our knowledge forward. And I'm really interested in helping this faculty mentor achieve their goals, and me helping them achieve their goals, then I will also benefit. I think that is a good sort of state of mind and frame of reference, that now that's really what you're talking about when you talk about what you did. How about one more question before we move into advice and guidance?
Yeah. So I think that's a great segue, thank you for talking about current and future plans. There's a question that came through about how do the panelists balance research with their other obligations? Do any of them have another part-time job? How do they balance things with classes? So how does that work and what does that look like?
Awesome. Is there anybody who wants to take a stab at that?
Sure, I can jump in that.
Okay. Thanks, Kunsang.
Yeah, so first thing I would say is look into your class, how many credits you're taking. Balancing your course is the first thing. So balance your course first in terms of make sure there are some hard courses, but also have easy courses. In that way, you can balance the two. And two is to, for me, entering into the research was more about first beginning as an independent researcher, which means you're earning credit for that course. So find the right research mentor, PI, and perform an independent study, 3 credit or 1 credit for a semester, and see if you really like that research. Which means you're getting credit, which means you don't have to worry a lot about timing or balance, right? Second thing, in terms of other than studying, what I do is I cook a lot. I go hiking. I am in outing club, so I take WashU students on sunrise hike, be it winter, summer, or spring. We go for road trips. So how do I balance that? Is for me, when I study and not study means not studying for me is a or not performing research or doing something academic, which means I am treating myself, or it's a credit in terms of what I've worked for. So it's a really good way of balancing the mind, your mind physically, mentally, and spiritually too. So which is totally important. So you should really, find your niche. What is your interest? What research interests? What are the researchers that you're interested in? Who are you? Who do you want to work with? And just approach those professors. And at the same time, keep an open mind. Always talk to your professor. If your research is too time consuming and you don't have time to balance, then in that case, I would say just talk to your professor. Your professor is not going to say you are such an irresponsible person, but they will understand. They will say, yes, that's totally understandable. If you want a job, you can job it, and also join next time. So I'm a research assistant in the ethnobotany lab right now, but with the graduate school applications, my professor totally understands, and she says, yeah, it's totally fine. You don't work, go to the lab for 2 weeks. That's totally fine. Concentrate on what's important for you and return back. Like that's something you can do it through open communication. So I would say balancing all those 3 things are all possible. So yeah, don't stress out. You got this.
That's really good advice, Kunsang. This idea of building it into your schedule like a course, that's regardless of the discipline. So there are many departments that have research for credit experiences, independent study, and research, experiences. So seeking that out in your department, and then so building it into your schedule like a class, give yourself the time to do it. And also to understand that, just like anything, it is about having good communication skills so that you, and open communication, I think, especially in this day and age, in this format, not being afraid to say, that I need to adjust something, and that your research mentor will has your interest at heart, all right, and will work with you in that way. So, yes.
So yeah, one of our next sort of set question was what resources or people helped you to pivot? And I think I would love to hear from you all as well. As part of that, there's been discussion of communication. If you could talk about what communication with your PI, your mentor, the grad students or postdocs you were working with, the other students you were working with looked like, because it is so important, you know, like Kunsang's saying, to be able to just talk to your mentor sometimes. And when you can't do that organically because you bump into one another, you know, how have you made that possible?
Yeah, and so that question, in addition to, you know, any advice and guidance you would give your peers about, you know, thinking about getting started in research in this environment. So, you know, what communication tips really, you know, helped you? What strategies have really helped you? And then, you know, any advice that you would give. I'll just call on you again randomly. How about? How about Meher?
Yeah, so this semester I kind of took on a little bit too heavy of a course load, which is okay. We learn from our mistakes. But I didn't get to work as much, I think, as I would have liked to on my research this semester. But again, like Kunsang said, like communication is really, really important. I just communicate like with my PI and say, you know, like I'm having like a lot to do this week. And you know, it's very, I think people are under the impression that like your PIs and professors are going to look down upon you if you can't complete the work, but I think it's better to be honest and upfront about it. So that's what I do. I just send an email if I can't work that day, and then I'll try to make it up like the next week or something like that. And like I really think that yes, you know, like I think there is a want, you know, you want to get involved in research now, especially for like freshmen. I know it's probably frustrating, but I do think like during this COVID-19 era, it's really important to not overcommit and take care of like your mental health and things like that. I think in fact right now is a really good time to explore like your interests. This is a great time, you know, to like look into what professors are researching and things like that. Get accustomed to your classes. What classes are you interested in? And then, you know, get ready to hit the ground running next year when things clear up. So I think like this is a really good time to, you know, take some time for yourself, figure out what you need to do, get your head straight, relax, and like it's all going to work out in the end. So
so wise. Yes, 100%. And to understand that everybody's in the same boat, right? Like you're not going to get left behind. You know, we're all experiencing the same things. And so if you hear of that, you know, roommate or WUSA or, you know, RA or somebody out on some online forum that has this amazing research opportunity and you don't, and you think, oh my gosh, my life is over. No, it's just that, you know, it's not true. Very wise advice to really use this time to hone in on what your interests are. Thank you. How about you, Devin?
So yeah, I agree a lot with that, but also I'm going to kind of give the opposite advice, which is I know personally when I was a freshman, I always thought research was really cool and like something I would do eventually. And I never really realized how many possibilities there were for first year students. How a lot of professors just have various jobs that can be done with people of all sorts of backgrounds. So obviously it is like there's no rush to get involved with research, but if it is one of your interests, if it is something you think is cool and something that will help you kind of stay focused and get through this pandemic, then don't be afraid. Just send some emails and try to get something started. And also just like there are a lot of resources out there for getting involved. Personally, the idea of just emailing a bunch of professors out of the blue was so scary for me. And luckily I found out that, oh, there's like a professor in my department who's the head of undergraduate research for the department. And I sat down with him and he went through all the different professors looking for people that like lined up with my interests and made it so much easier. So again, take time if you need it. There's no rush to get involved. But if you have that interest in time, like there's a lot of great resources and a lot of really cool research being done that can be that's accessible to people of all kind of ages, grades, and backgrounds.
100%. You know, if this is something that you really are excited to do, and I love that, Devin, you know, if this is something that you feel will help you cope and stay focused, by all means, go for it as well. And you know, what I'm hearing in both of your advice and guidance, the theme is that there's not one right way here, right? That there's so many ways to engage in undergraduate research and so many timings. It's very individualized pathway. And the person that you're talking about, for those who are wondering, like, I wonder, you know, so maybe that's in physics. The director of undergraduate studies in each department, if you go to departmental websites and you look to see who is the director of undergraduate studies for that department, that person can be a really great resource if you want to sit down with them and get a sense of who are the faculty, what are they doing. If having one conversation seems less intimidating than having, you know, 5 or 7 conversations, the director of undergraduate studies for each department on the Danforth campus, I think is a good way to do that. For the med school, you're going to have some cold conversations with faculty, just because there's not the same setup. But either one is fine. You're not doing something wrong having a cold conversation either. All right, so how about Carmen next?
Yeah, so in terms of communication and advising, I think I got pretty lucky because I had taken a class with my advisor, Nacho, back in freshman year. He'd been one of my major advisors since then. So we already had a pretty established relationship. And I think because of that, he felt some pressure to like show up for me and communicate with me. And he's also just the kind of person who would do that. Like that's the sort of relationship that he has to someone who he's advising. I found it really helpful to have pretty regular check-ins just to like keep myself on some sort of schedule, because like so little is structured now, and like that free time can be really powerful because you can like be flexible and try new creative things and like work a lot one week and then take a break if you need to. But having some sort of regularity for me was really important in tracking my progress, just to make sure like every 2 weeks I'm going to show up and tell you what I've done, and I don't want to show up and tell you that nothing has happened. Even if I had shown up and said that, he would have been okay and like helped me make a plan. So in terms of things to be doing now, like maybe you think you might want to do research in the future, maybe you found a professor whose work is really interesting to you or you're just like intrigued by, like maybe sign up for one of their courses to learn more about like who they are, what their style is, start to create that relationship. So then like say next summer rolls around and you think, I really love that course, I enjoyed working with this person, and they already know who I am, you already sort of have a basis from which to work on. Because I think it can be hard to try and like meet someone, hard, not impossible, to like meet someone by emailing them and then for them to really feel like committed to you if they don't know that much about you or you haven't like built some sort of connection. But if you've been in a class with them, you know them, they know you, that's like a good place to work from. And maybe you take the class and you don't like their style and you've learned something with that too. So that's my recommendation.
Awesome. That's really wise advice as well. Thank you. Anamika?
Yeah, so communication definitely played a big part in my experience this summer. A lot of the problems I encountered, I never done before. I'm also in a bioinformatics lab, and there were a lot of steps that I had no idea how to approach or like, plan for a few steps in advance. It was all about planning. In order to answer some of these questions, I actually had to reach out to other people in the lab. And these were people I've never spoken to in real life. And it was a bit intimidating, but I knew they were experts in that database or in that software or in that language. And I was intimidated, but I just went for it and it turned out to be a really good move. I got a lot of help and I was very grateful for it. And I'm not really going into specifics here, but it was probably one of the best decisions I made. And I also made a lot of great relationships to build from for future collaborative projects. So I would say, even if you are just starting out in the lab and you're maybe a little bit intimidated, it's not a bad idea to start building relationships with the other members, not only the people you're working directly with.
Did you have certain strategies that you use to build those relationships? Did you like do one-on-one conversations? Anything that you could, any specifics you could give the students who might be watching, looking to emulate your advice there?
Yeah, I think I might have cut out for a bit, but was the question, how did I kind of reach out and what strategies did I
Yeah,
use?
any strategies that you were like, oh yeah, that really worked. I'm gonna keep doing that over and over again. Like, was it, one-on-one Zoom conversations? Like what sorts of things did you do to build those relationships?
Okay, got it. So usually what I did was, so I would encounter a problem and I would talk to the person that I work with directly, and we would either hit a wall with that, and then I would know that I need to go to someone else because Megan, my the grad student I work with, she would just refer me, or sometimes I would just be working individually and I would need to figure this out by myself. In that case, I really just went on the lab website and figured out what people were doing. And we all have a group Slack. So I just Slack message saying, hey, I work with Megan and this is a problem that I'm facing. If there's any chance you have for a few minutes, could I just do a quick Zoom call or do a quick Slack call? And then, these are experts. So it would really just take like a 5-minute conversation and I would be like, oh, wow, that's exactly what I'm looking for. And it was very helpful because in some cases the same problem would have taken me 2 days to solve and I just talked to them for like 5 minutes and that was all they needed. So it was I can't tell you how much it was a good move for me. So yeah.
That's great. That's very, that gives us a really great example of how to put that into action. And I think that is something that, post-pandemic, I hope that students will continue to use as, maybe technology that can help you, emulate the quick question down the hall. Maybe maybe it's less intimidating to, ask via a Slack message and then have a quick phone call or a quick Zoom call instead of, working up the nerve to walk down the hall to present yourself in front of someone. So not being afraid to ask for help for sure it takes a lot of courage, and this is you gave us a great example of how to use the technology to really facilitate that. Wonderful. How about you, Nell?
Yeah, I would just really echo everything that was just said. I think that, well, for one, something that really helped, just kind of that was already in the lab structure that I was a part of was that every other week we would have an entire lab meeting. And then on the off weeks, you would have an individual meeting with the PI. So if that's not something that's already implemented, you could even just like suggest like, hey, I think having a weekly or biweekly meeting would be really helpful, especially as an undergrad. So that's kind of, I guess, similar to what Carmen said. And then, yeah, about the kind of the communications in between, I think that understanding the dynamics of the lab really helped me. So one example is like earlier in the summer, there was kind of something in like setting up the data that I was working with that there was just a miscommunication between me and 2 other people. And for about a week and a half, we kept emailing back and forth because it would be kind of like a 1 email a day thing. And then something that we ended up solving in like a 10 to 15-minute Zoom conversation at the end of it had taken the entire week because we kind of were just like kept thinking, oh, the next email will solve it. And then it didn't. And then, that kept going. So I think that really taught me for the rest of the summer to be a little bit more proactive in reaching out when I had a question. And I think something that was really helpful for me in that and like not being intimidated or feeling bad about bothering other people in the lab and stuff is like having similar to Anamika, I kind of had a grad student that like was my point person, like other than my PI, that I could go to more frequently and more casually to ask for advice when I was like having trouble in my own research. And then kind of, I guess, being on the same page as the other lab members about what kind of communication is like expected or allowed. Like, I think it was kind of understood among our whole lab that like small emails were totally fine to send and like no one was bothered by them. And like also having kind of frequent last minute Zoom meetings throughout the week was also a very regular thing. So I think that just like really having an understanding that, you know, we don't have those small communications anymore in person. And that's like totally fine to replace by like online and digital means, even though it feels a little bit like more frictiony. I think that just like rewiring your standards, I think really helped me at least in like keeping that progress going and keeping that communication going. Cause other than that, like I'm a very kind of like independent person. And I would say that probably most people that are like looking for their own research experiences might have that tendency as well. So I kind of tend to get stuck in like, oh, I have this problem, I can figure it out by myself. And then next thing I know, 4 hours have gone by and I haven't figured it out. So I think that catching that pattern early on and then like being very comfortable, which takes practice, but like the more you do it, the easier it'll come. Like being comfortable and communicating with the rest of your lab like is certainly just like was key throughout the entire summer for me.
Uh, I think one of the things that you really highlight in what the advice you've given is having that conversation ahead of time with your research group about, you know, what are our communication norms? Like, you know, it's okay to send little emails on these sorts of things. If it seems like you're struggling with something, you know, let's do a quick call on Zoom or, you know, on Teams or Slack or whatever the platform, the digital platform is, and not being afraid to, if you're new and you're going to join a lab group, not being afraid, I think in this you know, environment to say, you know, can you just get me up to speed on your communication norms? How do you share information? How would you like me to communicate with you and the rest of the lab group? Is it okay if you know, I do a Zoom call or something like that if I have a question, right? So not being afraid to ask up front and not just assuming that you're going to figure it out like you would probably figure out communication norms. If you were in a face-to-face interaction, you would probably be able to figure it out better. But in this environment, you really need to have that clear communication and just ask, you know, what are the communication norms? I think is a good strategy in this environment for sure. So we're almost out of time. Kunsong, do you have any advice? You already gave us such great advice about staying balanced. Any tips about getting started in research in this environment? Anything that we haven't said that you'd like to finish us out for just a quick second?
Sure. So my journey into the research field started through the summer archaeology field school in Peru and then through independent study, like mentioned earlier. So I would say, you know, connect the dots and see what really aligns together. And because had I not done the archaeology field school, I wouldn't know that I'm interested in archaeology ethnobotany lab. So do that, be ready to get your hands dirty and just go to the professor. So second piece of advice is that I would say be flexible and open-minded, because I never thought that I would be conducting a COVID-19 research, but I did because it aligned with my cultural anthropology and global health background. And also that was the most feasible thing to do. Third piece of advice is that be creative and incorporate different tools and techniques, because for my COVID-19 research, I used COVID-19 journals, studied social media postings other than the remote interviews. I also assigned like three field assistants in order to conduct field work in Nepal itself. So just be creative. And my last piece of advice is that research is not a linear path. because some participants in my COVID-19 journal did drop out because of technical difficulties. They are living in the Himalayan villages, and also that some of them really felt tired after a long day of working in the field. So, which is totally understandable. So I think, I mean, I would say, you know, just keep an open mind, connect the dots, and go ahead. Just talk about, be curious. Curiosity is my advice. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you all. This, I think, a common theme in everything that you all have been saying has really been, you know, cultivating this mindset towards flexibility, right? And broadening your definitions of, you know, what is data? What is a research experience? What is your research question even? And being willing to you know, really turn in ways that you never thought you would ever go, and finding that actually quite a meaningful way to conduct undergraduate research. So everybody's presentations will be in the virtual symposium format. Create your login so that you can interact in the comments section. If you have questions further questions for our wonderful panelists, feel free to visit their presentations in the symposium Forager One platform. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and for your wonderful questions. And thank you to our wonderful panelists for sharing all your wisdom, hard-earned wisdom through experience. So thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.